Milan Kundera was a Czech novelist, short story writer, playwright, essayist, and poet whose works combine comic references with political criticism and philosophical speculation. He was born on April the 1st, 1929 in Brno, Czechoslovakia and died on July the 11th, 2023 in Paris, France. The son of a noted concert pianist and musicologist, Milan Kundera studied music but gradually turned to writing and began teaching literature at the Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts in Prague in 1952. During his early career, he moved in and out of the Communist Party, remaining a member until 1970. Kundera had participated in the brief but heady liberalization of Czechoslovakia in 1966. In 1967 to 68, and after the Soviet occupation of the country, he refused to admit his political errors and consequently was attacked by the authorities, who banned all his works, fired him from his teaching positions, and ousted him from the Communist Party. In 1975, Kundera was allowed to immigrate with his wife from Czechoslovakia to teach at the University of Rennes in France. In 1979, the Czech government stripped him of his citizenship. In the 1970s and 80s, his novels including The Farewell Party, The Book of Laughter and Forgetting, and his best-known work, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, were published in France and elsewhere abroad, but until 1989 were banned in his homeland. His other novels include The Joke, a comic, ironic view of the private lives and destinies of various Czechs during the years of Stalinism. Life is Elsewhere, about a hapless, romantic-minded hero who thoroughly embraces the communist takeover of 1948. The Book of Laughter and Forgetting, a series of wittily ironic meditations on the modern state's tendency to deny and obliterate human memory and historical truth. His novel Immortality explores the nature of artistic creation. Kundera began writing in French in 1994 with Slowness, followed by Identity and Ignorance. His last novel was The Festival of Insignificance, about a group of Parisian friends, including a Pakistani. Kundera's wide-ranging reflections appear in the art of the novel, Testaments, Betrayed, The Curtain, and Encounter.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to the Art with World. Today we are going to discuss Milan Kundera, who is one of the greatest novelists of our times. And to discuss Milan Kundera, we have with us Dr. WAQAS MASOOD in our studios. Dr. WAQAS MASOOD is professor at Comstats University, and he is a great lover of literature and art, and we'll discuss about different works of Milan Kundera with him today. Welcome to the show, WAQAS. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me over.
So, WAQAS, we are talking about Milan Kundera today, and everyone knows, at least those who are interested in literature, they know his great contribution to about the novel at its form and the novels he has written. His books, The Art of the Novel, is a groundbreaking work who show different angles with which we can analyze what a novel is, what were its origins, and what is its need in our times. As you also know that he remained subject of many controversies during his lifetime, when he was a member of Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, and then he had to move to France because of his novels were banned in Czechoslovakia, as you know. And he also gave very new ideas about art of novel as well. I'm a huge fan of him. So maybe you can start how you were introduced to Milan Kundera and what are the things which you liked most in him?
Yeah, so I mean, almost 2 decades ago, there was a friend who first talked about Kundera, and I think I was like watching television one day, and that was the first time I saw the movie about the unbearable lightness of being, and 2 great actors of the time, Daniel Day-Lewis and Juliette Binoche were in that movie. And then from time to time I read Milan, but then many years later I started reading The Art of the Novel, and then I revisited the unbearable lightness of being and immortality, which is, in my view, a fascinating work, you know, and so we are going to talk about that later.
Right. Well, we do not know much about his biography, as he himself was against that a novelist should tell about. He was of the opinion that novelists should not be a public personality. So we'll not talk about much of his biography, but we'll talk about his novels and his ideas about novel.
Yeah.
So could you tell us his main idea about novel, as we can find them in his book, The Art of the Novel?
Yes, he calls novel a very European thing, and also a logical extension of the Greek thought, and then it extends to the American novel as well. But the basic idea is that all these scientific advancement and the way we look at the world, it changed with the breakthrough achievements by the scientists in Europe, and that brought about the Industrial Revolution, and the man tried to come to grips with the technological advancement that science made possible. And for a while, well, as Kundera puts it, this is one way of putting it, of course, this is his perspective, that the humans forgot that they exist and they are the same humans with the same needs. For a time, they were kind of mesmerized by the colossal advances that science made. So which he calls the forgetting of the being. And
you mean the pace of life became very fast and everyone became more busier than before, and that's why they entered into the process of forgetfulness, as he quotes Husserl, I guess.
Yeah, because you see, although you make some progress, but it takes a while to imbibe that the effects of that progress. So, and in that process, probably they stopped considering themselves the same humans with the same passions, the same needs, and after a while, they kind of thought that they should refocus themselves, and there should be a balance that ought to be maintained. And that's how the novel was written, and he talks about Don Quixote by Cervantes, and then he subsequently all the novels that came. So according to the novel, it's like to kind of come to grips with that forgetting of the beings and man trying to reassert himself.
Okay, I mean, what I get from this point of view is that history is changing, I mean the times are changing, and people are busy in day-to-day lives, and they don't have time to reflect upon themselves, and there's a need to some art form which reminds them of what they are. At least they should keep exploring.
Yeah.
And then he thinks that novel is perhaps a medium to explore human existence, is it?
Yes, absolutely, because we are very diverse by nature, and it's like a spectrum, and the idea of the novel is to explore that spectrum. And he writes very conspicuously in The Art of the Novel that, you see, the whole idea of a novel is to discover a hitherto unknown segment of existence, and that is the novel's basic exploration, the basic objective. So you see, in some ways, when you read The Art of the Novel, it actually educates you and changes the way you look at things, you know. So that is why whenever I reread it many times, it's always fascinating to revisit, and you learn a new thing every time you revisit.
That's true, it's same with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say novel is a means, I mean kind of way to explore human existence, what do you mean by human existence? Do you mean that it's a way to study human psychology or something else?
Yes, so that is one aspect, of course, this quest for the self and why we are here, what is our purpose, you see. And if you look at poetry, literature, philosophy, this has always been the question. This is the whole idea of learning things, is to know something, and some people say that life has no meaning of its own, you have to create one. So this is a quest not only to know yourself, but also to create some meaning in this life in which there are so many factors that make you feel that things are not in your control. And man wants to have that control, humans want to have that control. And in fact, science has been...
That is human's problem, I guess.
That is fundamental human problem. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, in this respect, I would like to share something that he says, you know, because there is this quest for the self, but the psychological novel. So somewhere he, you know, an interviewer asks him a question about the birth of the psychological novel, and so he talks about different things. He talks about Goethe and Laplace and Constant and the other writers of the century, and he says that the apogee of the evolution is to be found, it seems to me, in Proust and Joyce. Joyce analyzes something still more ungraspable than Proust's lost time, the present moment. There would seem to be nothing more obvious, more tangible and palpable than the present moment, and yet it eludes us completely. All the sadness of life lies in that fact. In the course of a single second, our senses of sight, of hearing, of smell register, knowingly or not, a swarm of events, and a parade of sensations and ideas passes through our heads. Each instant represents a little universe irrevocably forgotten in the next instant. Now Joyce's great microscope manages to stop, to seize that fleeting instant and make us see it. But the quest for the self ends yet again in a paradox. The more powerful the lens of the microscope observing the self, the more the self and its uniqueness elude us. Beneath the great Joycean lens that breaks the soul down into atoms, we are all alike. But if the self and its uniqueness cannot be grasped in man's interior life, then where and how can we grasp it? So you see, he sums it up. But the most important, I'll tell you about something, because you know I'm a physicist, but so there is an uncanny resemblance of something, but I would like to say. So the interviewer asks, can it be grasped at all? And he says, the quest for the self has always ended and always will end in a paradoxical dissatisfaction. For novel cannot breach the limits of its own possibilities, and bringing those limits to light is already an immense discovery, an immense triumph of cognition. Now you see, here we are talking about, so there are human beings, so they are trying to know about themselves, and there is a universe which they are a part of, and they also want to know about the structure of that universe, and science answers many questions. So there is this very fundamental principle called the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and which basically deals with the microscopic world. And all it tells you is that, for my viewers, you see, the way you look at something is by shining light. Light is something that illuminates. But on the microscopic world, so if you are looking at the electron, it is also very tiny. So the moment you shine light, it displaces, and you come up with a fundamental limit of the universe, that it is impossible to measure the position and momentum of an electron simultaneously. So one way is that, you see, he says that the more powerful the lens of the microscope observing the self, the more the self and the lens, the more this uniqueness eludes us. Similarly, when you try and observe the electron, it also eludes you. You can discover one aspect of its existence, but not the other. So there is a very uncanny resemblance. We are part of this world. We are looking at it through the scientific laws that govern it, and then we are trying to discover our own selves, and we find that the more we try and know ourselves, the more the process eludes us. But he says it's a triumph of cognition. So I would say in the same manner, the uncertainty principle also tells you no matter how sophisticated the apparatus is, this is the limit that the universe puts on you. You won't be able to go any further, no matter what. So you see, this is very uncanny resemblance, and when I for the first time read these lines, I was awestruck, because I could see this uncanny resemblance of the humans and the world they are living in.
So in a way, you think that Kundera has brought the art of novel very much close to scientific approaches.
Yeah, I mean, he never tries to say anything along these lines, but yes, you see, the way he says the lens, the microscope. So these are scientific tools, right, to look at things. But so I'm sure, like all the great men of their times, he was also aware of the scientific progress and the birth of the quantum mechanics, and how the microscopic world is very different from the macroscopic world, and the laws that govern on the macroscopic scale do not govern at the microscopic scale. So
if he was convinced that it is not possible to explore human existence, then why all this writing novel? Why this effort to make?
yeah, so we try and learn within the framework that we are allowed to know ourselves, So something may be inherently unfathomable, but there are parts of it that you can still understand, and this endeavor to understand should continue. Like, in science, there are so many things that we like fusion. We want to make it happen on a commercial scale. It eludes us. We are still trying, and stuff like that.
It also brings me the concept of myth of Sisyphus, that every day you're trying to push that stone upward, but it comes down. So you will keep on exploring human existence, but maybe you won't be able to do that one.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. There are so many questions, fundamental questions about the nature of the universe and everything. So we still do not know everything, but I think, as they say, you keep trying to stretch the limits of your knowledge, and make the life worth living also.
Yeah, very true. As you have rightly said, he uses this light which novel sheds on human existence at many places in his writings. And he says that different characters or different events illuminate certain aspects of human existence. But I think more, do you think his emphasis on individuals only, or does he also talk about societies, and particularly individuals' relationship with societies?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, because I think the thing that he says about the novel, and so one particular thing about Europe is that there is this perennial conflict between the individual and the society. So in my view, Kundera is amongst those who puts a lot of focus, and he gives a lot of importance to the individual, and he does not want the individual brilliance to be cowed down by the pressures of the society. So that is why you see them constantly engaged in a struggle, and that struggle actually then kind of enables him also to map the human existence.
Great. Another thing which he emphasizes many times in his writings, that novel is basically creation of Europe. Its birthplace is in Europe. So how does he differentiate other traditional storytelling which existed since time immemorial in human societies, and novel which he particularly talks about is created by European civilization?
So I think because he connects the European novel to the Greek tradition, and then he extends it to the American novel. So although of course the art of storytelling is has been there forever, ever since we came to this planet, but the thing is, it's the way you tackle the questions and the way you defy the odds and the pressure exerted by you by the society. it's like challenging the norms, defying the tradition, and to assert yourself. I think that is in essence very European, and that is why he talks about the European novel and the European tradition, although as you said correctly, there are other societies, but this sort of open-mindedness you see in Europe, and it has a lot to do with the Industrial Revolution and the, you know, the cataclysmic change that it brought.
Yeah, I think he also explained in his The Art of the Novel, the first chapter, which he depreciating legacy of Cervantes.
Cervantes, yeah.
And he says that because of so many changes of science, philosophy, human thought systems, there was no central control, which before Industrial Revolution used to have in humans' minds, and they used to think universe differently. But then they realized themselves to be in a different world after scientific revolution, and they didn't know how to deal with that world. And that was dilemma in which he introduces the character of Don Quixote, who is trying to understand this world, and that is his, he says, a kind of birth of novel in Europe.
Europe, yeah.
So you very rightly said that so many things happen in Europe, and that was a response to those things which happened in Europe in those times.
Yeah, and may I add that it has a lot to do with the secular tradition of Europe also. So
Okay.
without that secular tradition, you know, things would not have expanded that much, because
Right.
they have kind of asserted themselves, and they have brought to, so they have broken the taboos also in the process.
And how does he differentiate novelist from just a writer?
Well, I've got something here where, you know, it's again interesting in the sense that although these people are great people, but at the same time, because they are the creators of art, so somehow they want their art to be noted and not themselves, you see. So, and he says the novelist and his life, and I would like to read a few things. Just, you see, according to a well-known metaphor, the novelist demolishes the house of his life and uses its bricks to construct another house, that of his novel, from which it follows that a novelist's biographers unmake what the novelist made and remake what he unmade. You see, I would like to say also here, this prose is
It's beautiful.
lyrical.
Yeah, it's
It has the,
beautiful.
you know, quality of poetry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you are, it's prose, but it has this amazing lyrical quality about it. Their labor from the standpoint of art, utterly negative, can illuminate neither the value nor the meaning of a novel. So it's the focus is on the art itself, the process of creation. The moment Kafka draws more attention than Joseph K., the process of Kafka's posthumous dying begins. So you see, if the artist gets more attention than the art that he creates or she creates, then it's a defeat in itself. So as they say, knowledge requires a lot of self-effacement, and this is all about it, you know. So there is this great thing, and Milan puts it so eloquently, elegantly, and with such mastery of the language.
Yeah, perhaps this also remind me of something else as well, because in present times, most of the people, writers, they play to the galleries.
Yeah.
What people want to listen to, what can make them famous. If you just look around different art activities happening globally and maybe in our country as well, like literature festivals, their more focus is on persons and personalities, the famous people,
Yes.
celebrities.
Yes.
If you are doing a TV show, people would like very famous person to come in so that their rating of that program should raise.
Yeah.
So that actually doing so, the artist compromises his or her freedom
Yeah.
to say something which many people may not like it, and they may ignore him or her, and that's that compromise of art and literature. That is one that would lead to maybe as he himself says, death of the novel,
Yes.
as he says that you may find many people writing novels, but the essence of novel, that its quality to explore human self, human existence, human condition, that is compromised.
Yeah.
So, what's
Yeah,
your
so
take?
I mean, I would say that in Kundera's words, it's like pandering to mediocrity, and which will eventually lead to the death of the novel, because the whole idea is to explore something and to excel in that process, to excel in the process of the creation of art. And if it is going to be determined by the external factors, and as you said, like playing to the gallery and how the shortcuts to becoming famous and all that. Similarly in science also.
Okay.
So there are people who write hundreds of papers and they are not known at all. And then there are people like Einstein who write a handful of papers and they are epoch making. They change the way you look at the world. So I mean, yeah, so lessons can be drawn. If science becomes that kind of process, then it will also die. And some people say that in certain societies, this publish versus perish thing has in fact proved to be quite detrimental to the puritanical acquisition of knowledge.
Well, I don't know what would happen. People say that we should be optimistic.
Yes, we should be optimistic. I think we make mistakes and we learn from them, and this is
maybe a lot of solutions humans would find later on.
Later on, yeah.
We may not be able to see them now, but later they may find solutions. Yeah.
Like the people of our generation, they love to have a feel of these books.
Yeah.
But the younger generation, they are very comfortable reading scientific articles, books, novels on their computers, on their mobiles. So I think humans have this adaptability, and maybe for one generation it is difficult to get to grips with the changes, because the scientific not only the scientific progress, but the advancement of technology has made it extremely difficult for humans to kind of respond that quickly.
Well, you talked about these changes, like we used to read books, and our children these days, they are more comfortable with electronic devices. So this change, I think, is also one of favorite topics of Milan Kundera.
Yeah.
But in a different way. He says that when he was a child and his grandmother had a very direct relationship with life. I mean, she used to take care of cattle, she used to knit, she used to sew, and she used to cook. In the same way, men would do many things, many household chores, which made them connected with life directly. But these days, a lot of things are happening. You are not doing this, someone else is doing it for you. And so is the change of values. He says in Europe, an hour has struck when things have changed, and he gives so many examples. And beautifully, in immortality, he uses devices of art to show that change. Would you share something about that?
Well, the great thing about immortality is, whatever you said about immortality is correct, but for me, I actually picked up the book, and there was this part of the passage where Hemingway and Goethe were talking to each other. And then I started reading, and it was not connected to the previous part, although it was connected, which was not clear to me then. It became clear to me later on. But the point is, there is this amazing quality about this book that even if you start reading from anywhere, it engages you. And it is written in such a flexible way. So this whole experiment fascinates me. It's kind of a miracle book in many ways. But then there are things. So let's begin with this passage where. So of course, it's a book about immortality, and as we discussed earlier, humans do not, I mean, they don't like that things change, and many a time the things are no longer in their.
But they keep changing things.
They keep changing things, yeah. So, and then of course, death is a big question,
Yeah.
and nobody wants to die. Today we are here, and tomorrow we are not going to be here. So, this kind of thing has led to all the intellectual endeavor that humans have indulged in. So, but here he talks about, you know, it's like a fictional. First of all, it's amazing that he has this immense imagination, that he makes two greats talk to each other. It's a fictional account, but it's a very readable account, you know. And so, I wish I could read the whole, you know, in fact, all the passages here, but I'll just read out a few for the viewers. So, he says, forget for a moment that you are an American, exercise your brain. He who doesn't exist cannot be present, and he then goes on and on. The instant I died, I vanished from everywhere totally. I even vanished from my books. Those books exist in the world without me. Nobody will ever find me in them, because you cannot find someone who doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, I would like to agree with you, said Hemingway, but explain this to me. If the image you have left behind has nothing to do with you, why did you lavish so much care on it while you were still alive? Why did you invite Ackerman to join you? Why did you start writing poetry and truth? And you see now the admission of the great man. Ernest, resign yourself to the idea that I was as foolish as you. That obsession with one's own image, that man's fatal immaturity.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to be indifferent to one's image. Such indifference is beyond human strength. So, you see, the human conditioning, our weaknesses, everything is being talked about here. One becomes capable of it only after death. Man has never been able to accept it, grasp it. So, you were saying, why don't we accept it and grasp it? Because that is the beauty that we, you know,
that is our human
that is our
condition.
human, that is also probably our, man doesn't know how to be mortal. And when he dies, he doesn't even know how to be dead.
Yeah.
So, you see, this is something great about immortality, and there are other aspects. So, if I can share with you, then I would like to share with you.
Just few, because
Yeah.
we are short of time.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'll just so the characters are Agnes and Laura and Paul, and the main characters around which everything is revolving. And Agnes' grandparents are from a borderland where, you know, French and German are both spoken, and that's how in this particular novel the immortality, the Goethe was introduced for the first time. Somewhere else, you know, Agnes, Paul, and Laura, the central characters of immortality. And Agnes's grandparents belong to a borderland where both French and German are spoken, and that is where Goethe is introduced for the first time. And then this Wanderer's Night Song,
Yeah.
and which is a very famous German poem. And I wish I could read that in German, but it's also, the English translation is also given, and it says, on all hilltops there is peace. In all treetops you will hear hardly a breath. Birds in the woods are silent. Just wait, soon you too will rest.
Wow.
And you see, now the poetic quality and the beauty of this poem, and why it became such a great poem, but I am not going to dwell on that. But suddenly he tries to connect it with her father's departure and also the relationship with her father. So, you see, father was lying in bed, his forehead damp with fever, and she grasped his hand. Trying to master her tears, she whispered along with him, soon you too will rest. And she recognized the voice of father's approaching death. It was the calm of silent birds in the treetops.
Wow.
So you see, this is
So that also reminds me of one of his famous quote about poetry, that poetry doesn't mean to dazzle us with some great idea, but to leave some moment of unforgettable nostalgia within us.
yeah.
And I would also say that Immortality is a great book. With the help of these characters, Agnes, Paul, he shows different shades of the changing world.
Changing world.
It also tells about individuals, their pains, the crowd, environmental issues, even gender issues. Not in that social sciences, the way social scientists put them, but in very existential way. And he also tells about values changing in Europe in different ways, as you know.
The concept of shame, for instance.
Yeah. It's a great book.
It's a great book. It's a great book, and it's a
yeah.
must read for those who enjoy literature
Yeah.
and who really want to know the spectrum of human existence. Yeah.
All right. I mean, you know that Immortality I like a lot, but his most famous work, according to critics, we are talking about Kundera as readers. It's a reader's perspective.
It's a reader's perspective.
It's not a great criticism or some philosophical discussions we are doing on him. But because we like him, so we are talking about him. But people, or rightly so maybe, that Unbearable Lightness of Being is his great work. And I also think that sometimes it also seems closer to poetry.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, would you like to talk about that as well?
Yes, as you said, there are so many things in that particular novel. The main characters, Thomas and Teresa and Sabina, and Franz also. But then if you come to the title, the unbearable lightness of being. So I think I would say the greatest thing about it is about the relationships again, and this lightness and heaviness that he.
What is in life without relationships?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no life, but at the same time, when you are in intimate relationships, no matter how fascinating they are, they also become a burden. They, curb your freedom, and that is what he refers to as the burden of existence. And so when you kind of step out of those things, and no matter how wonderful a relationship is, and if you kind of live for a long time, it has its own challenges. So he refers to that, and the lightness, of course, is when you are no longer in a relationship, and that's the thing that he refers to. Unbearable lightness of the being.
That is another paradox.
It's exactly. It's a paradox that you want to get out of something, and then you again want to be in.
I would like to quote Ghalib here. इश्क में तबीयत ने ज़िस्त का मज़ा पाया, दर्द की दवा पाई, दर्द ला दवा पाया.
Yeah.
I mean, in love, you found the real pleasures of life, but at the same time, it's a kind of problem which is not which you cannot solve, and
so I was also reminded of a verse, and I was.
But let's just keep it on Kundera, I think.
Yeah, but just 100 बार बंदे इश्क से आज़ाद हम हुए, पर क्या करें कि दिल ही अदू है फराग का. So all it says against the predicament, that when you are in it, you want to be out of it, and when you are out of it, you want to feel the same adventure, the same passion again. So yes, in many ways, this is a predicament of human existence.
Another theme he discusses in this novel, that is kitsch. He also discussed in various other places, particularly in The Art of the Novel, and he discusses it with the perspective of art, and he thinks that it's not it's an art in poor taste, and it's as if someone is looking at a mirror who tells lie and tells you are beautiful, and when you look into that mirror and finding your beautiful image, you become you have so much gratitude for that mirror. he defines it in somehow or other in this way.
Yeah.
But in Unbearable Lightness of Being, he has discussed in political perspective as well. So it's also very interesting if you have to say something.
Yeah,
about
because
it.
the story deals with Prague,
Yeah,
and he was he was a Czech, and he went into
Prague
self-exile.
Spring,
Prague
let's say.
Spring, yeah. So 1968,
Yeah,
and then the fascist regime, how it made the lives of many who wanted to express themselves very difficult, and that happens all over the world.
Yeah.
Again, that's
in different ways.
in different ways. So I think it is something that Kundera was directly affected by, and he's one of those novelists who actually through characters come up with a commentary on that era also, and he tells you about the political situation, the politicians, and how they were made to suffer, and how other people who didn't agree to stop speaking against certain excesses, how they were sidelined and how they were made to leave that place. So yes, it is something which is very important, and in this critical kitsch, he expresses his displeasure, and he also tells you how detrimental it is. And of course, the three characters, all three of them are affected by the fascist regime in one way or the other. So in the course of the novel, he tells you that how adversely affected all these characters are by the fascism, which was prevalent around them in those times, and how as a doctor Thomas suffered, because then so I leave it to the viewers to read the novel and explore the beauty about it. So before I say something, maybe would you like to, because you are an author of 2 books, and so kitsch in the
I think in that sense, kitsch according to Kundera is not something we, I mean, which you can, you try, it's very sentimentality which is coming to the fore, and then you make it a higher value as well. And you can also see them around, well, whenever you are talking about this celebrity culture maybe. In this novel, I guess, I mean, as you know, this novel starts with the story of a surgeon who wants to live his own life in one way or the other. He doesn't disturb others, but he is fond of pleasures, and he lives his life. But then there are a lot of things happening around him. There is a Russian invasion into Prague, and everyone is trying to define life as the rulers want them to define. Yeah. He disagrees to that, but at the same time he suffers problems in his job as well. But he doesn't take any credit for that. He doesn't want to, because he doesn't want to become hero. He doesn't want to become part of that. He is doing his action because they are informed by his own aesthetics. And then they had to leave. They have to leave the country. And then the woman he loves, she wants to come back because she herself wants to define some meanings in her life, and she wants to become part of that resistance movement against the invaders, and she becomes photojournalist. And another woman who is a painter, and she has to leave. She leaves for America as well, and it's also very great contradiction he is showing. The family she is living with, the man, the American man, he thinks that everything related to her is just bad, whereas it's not like that. Things are good or bad everywhere.
Yeah.
So that is how this story travels.
Yeah.
And in a wonderful I mean, it's wonderful to read. It's a great pleasure to read. And at the end of the day, he thinks that normal life belongs to very small pleasures. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big narrative. So life can be like this as well. So that is how I think, and briefly, I mean there are many shades, many
Yes,
layers
yes,
in
yes.
this. The way I am talking about is just upper layer of it, but
Yeah.
deep down it has a lot of various meanings
Yeah.
in this story.
So what resonates with me is the political kitsch, and because even these days when we look around, we see that, you know, so people cling to ideologies, and they cling to those ideologies in a way that they don't leave any room for any question. And that is what irritates Kundera, because you see, he tells you in The Art of the Novel as well, that novel and its greatness lies in the very fact that you are allowed to explore, and you are given the freedom to express.
Yeah.
So with the totalitarian kitsch, you are robbed of that freedom, and that, what he says, that will eventually bring about the death of the novel, because if you don't allow people to explore, you won't give them the freedom to question. And he, in fact, so of course, as you said, it's about the, you know, communism and the Russian invasion of Prague in 1968. So he talks in that sense, but you have already talked about Sabina. So I would just talk, in fact, read a few passages, just a couple of passages, which kind of explore this theme of kitsch a little more. The feeling induced by kitsch must be a kind the multitudes can share. Kitsch may not, therefore, depend on an unusual situation. It must derive from the basic images people have engraved in their memories. The ungrateful daughter, the neglected father, children running on the grass, the motherland betrayed, first love. So you see, if we look around, so it's so relevant still, that how they appeal to certain things. And then, you know, and he says, no one knows this better than politicians. Whenever a camera is in the offing, they immediately run to the nearest child, lift it in the air, kiss it on the cheek. Kitsch is the aesthetic ideal of all politicians and all political parties and movements. Those of us who live in a society where various political tendencies exist side by side, and competing influences cancel or limit one another, can manage more or less to escape the quick inquisition. The individual can preserve his individuality. The artist can create unusual works. But whenever a single political movement corners power, we find ourselves in the realm of totalitarian kitsch. And that is what he thinks is detrimental, you know. And so finally, this is so beautifully put that I am, you know, so inclined to share with viewers. In the realm of totalitarian kitsch, all answers are given in advance and preclude any questions. It follows then that the true opponent of totalitarian kitsch is the person who asks questions. And if you look around, that's the problem. Those who question, they are not liked. And now there comes the real Kundera. A question is like a knife that slices through the stage backdrop and gives us a look at what lies behind it.
Okay, great. It's fascinating what you have just read, and I must say there are so many other things to talk about Milan Kundera, but as you know, as it always happens, we are just given 1 hour or so, and the time is up. So maybe some other discussion will discuss more aspects of Milan Kundera.
Yeah, the hypertrophy of the soul, you know. Yes, and there are so many other themes, and yeah. So Kundera is, you know, one of the greatest of our times, and now with this discussion, hopefully the viewers will understand why he is regarded as one of the greatest.
So thank you, WAQAS, for being with us today, and thank you for this wonderful discussion.
Pleasure is entirely mine, and thank you for inviting me over.
So viewers, here we come to the close of our discussion. See you next Sunday, same time.